Me, me, me. Me, me, me. Okay, good evening. Welcome. This is an open chat with David, Kevin, possibly some of the SPL's admins if they're free and available. They've been sent the link. It is Saturday, the 9th of April, 8:35. We are but 5 minutes behind. Kevin, I've muted you by accident. There we go.
Hello, can thou hear me?
Loud and clear. Like a bell.
Been a while, been away for a while. Yeah, it's been a little while, so here we are, up to shoot the breeze. I see Lisa's in the room already. Hello, Lisa and James. Much love to you guys. Yeah, hope everybody's all right.
Lisa, James.
And
Hello.
life's been getting in the way, so we made time to come in and say we're still here, we're still breathing. It's all good.
I'm just posting a link into SPL's
Okay.
Telegram, and then I'll be with you. Moment.
Kathy, hello, darling. Hope you're all right.
You got the television on or radio or something?
Oh shit! Yeah, sorry, I hadn't done it for so long. I forgot to shut it up. Shut up. There you go. Sorry about that.
That's that done. Okay. I can see the room, yes. James and Lisa, Kathy. What? Nice to see you, to see you nice. We have a laid back, informal couple of hours, general update, recap on current chats, topics we've been going through over the last week or so. An informal update, a chance to see mine and Kevin's boat races, and read the room, take your questions, and I'll have, like I say, invited the admins, Claire, Gansders, Bert, PJ, Quinn, Simon. We'll see if we pop in, but if not, myself and Kevin shall be your hosts for this evening's entertainment and possible pleasure, if you're lucky.
Peas in the house. Evening. It's all good. Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? Forgotten what to do.
Jibber jabber. Jibber jabber.
Oh, if it's just bullshit talk, I'm the king. Here we come. Let's roll.
We was talking, there was questions. We're going to recap some basics, I believe, would be in our interest, and I'll go through some videos that have been done recently on Indie and SPL's Pro alternative backup channel. We'll be productive with the time. When we are looking to prove that we've communicated with an office, a legal entity, a public commercial legal public office entity, somebody asked what part of the law it is that states that we are required to use recorded, signed for, guaranteed, next day delivery, proof of service, or proof of service of process. But there isn't actually a law as such or a maxim anywhere. There are postal acts, and we are familiar with the Universal Postal Union, But if you're going to make a claim, or anyone's going to try and say that they've communicated with you and you've ignored it, you may or may not have had the communication. You would be the respondent, or you would send it to somebody, notices, letters, correspondence, and you would be wanting the respondent to reply or acknowledge. And if they don't, or if you don't, and somebody says they've communicated with you, then part of the due process of the civil procedure rules, it is the practice directions that stipulate for the court practice is one area, the civil court practice, and then the civil procedure rules. And I believe it comes under CPR Part 6, Service of Documents. If someone's going to say that they have served you or sent you correspondence and it's of a legal nature, then they would be required to be able to show sufficient proof that they have sent you communications and that you have received the communications and you have failed to respond, and that's vice versa for you sending it somebody, an office, or them sending it you. Then the reasons that we've learned to use signed for various forms of services that the post office offer, that the carrier Royal Mail used to, I use the word used to because of recent restrictions, signatures aren't always being obtained, and obviously Royal Mail sometimes hire out their services to third-party carriers, TNT for instance, or other such mail carriers, and Royal Mail don't actually conduct the service themselves, and often companies, corporations, offices are given bulk amounts of mail banded together, and in those bulk amounts of mail there may be your correspondence that requires a signature, which you've been sold the service at the post office for, but for whatever reason, if it's due to current restrictions, it won't happen. Or if it's because the Royal Mail have not been the carrier in this instance, or in some instances they are, and they don't obtain a signature for the service which you've paid. So there are various issues with that, as you can imagine, paying for a service at the post office and then that service not being given. It's got various technicalities we could go through. You know, you've paid for a service and it hasn't been given. But the rulings is within the due process of the civil procedure rules, and I believe Part 6, Service of Documents. So you would be required, if you're going to make a claim, or there's a claim being made upon you, if they're going to hold you to account, or you want to hold somebody to account and argue that they've received mail, communications, notices, and they've ignored these notices, or they've failed to respond, or it's timed out, we obviously have let you know about the pre-action protocols. So ignorance is no excuse. That's not ignorance of the law is no excuse, but your silence is deemed as acceptance. You know, we talked about tacit acquiescence. So in terms of practicality, the reasons why we hold offices to account and how we can hold offices to account is because we can, in a court of law, in line with the practice directions of the civil procedure rules, namely Part 6, Service of Documents, have the chance to present the documents, the receipts, the tracking number, the services paid for. Often you will find that there is a signature obtained and it will be put onto the Royal Mail website. It's there for about a week. You can screenshot, download that as well to put with your service receipt from the post office, what you've paid for that Royal Mail or the carriers should carry out. So if you haven't got any of that, or the ones that have tried to communicate with you insist they've sent you mail but they have no way of proving it other than just their word, then that doesn't stand and it can't be proved. So therefore it is arguable that you may not have received it. If you've responded to something and it was sent franked, normal domestic post, and then you later say you didn't receive it, well then you've responded to it, so therefore that response will then serve as the fact you've received it, because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to respond to it. So there have been instances where people have tried to be clever, but they've ultimately slipped up because the argument is you say you didn't get this mail, but here it is. You've responded and referenced it a week or two later. So which is it? It's clear and apparent you did receive. So I hope that's clear, and I hope that's practical. That can start us off, Kevin, on that line. Yeah. Is he muted? Yes, you're muted.
Yes, here I am. I turned it off myself, but yeah, that's correct, absolutely correct. About tacit acquiescence, and yeah, be careful how you're responding and how you respond, etc. So some precise information.
Yeah, and when you do get the if furthermore, if you would like to leave your correspondence and notices open, when you go to the post office, they give you the stickers. They put the stickers on once you've paid for the service. First class, second class, signed for, guaranteed next day, special delivery, whichever it is. There is no ruling to say what style, type, service you must have. You just must be able to prove in one form or another that your correspondence has been sent and that the recipient has received it. That is enough. So with that said, I've immediately lost my train of thought. Oh, you when you're going to send the document, the notice, generally a notice. Sometimes it can be a letter in some instances as well. Leave the envelope open, and then when you go to the post office and they affix the stickers and the tracking on the front of the envelope, you can put a space in your notice to say when it was shipped, when the vessel was shipped and docked. If we want to get into certain terminology of the UPU and the post office itself and what you're doing at the point of paying for that service, it's deemed as delivered because it's generally, some of the services are, because it's guaranteed and you paid for it and it's next day special recorded delivery. It's guaranteed, it's deemed as served to the recipient at the point of payment. You can leave a space on your notice with the date and the time sent, and you can ask the post office to tear off the smaller strip and you can affix that to the letter or notice itself by way of just asking the post office to, you point out where you want it put in, and the document, the instrument, the document itself can have the same tracking number as the envelope on it. So Stephen
Yeah,
did some work with that recently, and we've been doing this some years now, but now others are talking about it and utilising this process and being able to refer, track and trace these communications that we send.
yeah. Those little stickers are handy, as you say. Once you get the whatever you're sending signed for, special delivery, whatever, there's small stickers on there. As Dave said, you can attach one of them to the actual document. Hence Dave saying don't seal it up before you go, unless you've got a roll of those stickers at home, like some of us have. So you can affix that, and technically that's your vessel number because it matches the delivery. So use one of the stickers supplied off the special delivery or the signed for, and attach that. So you could, if you wanted to, put on, it's not necessary, but you could put on your correspondence, you could leave a vessel number, full colon, and then put the sticker next to that, or just place it on it, but it then relates to the delivery directly.
Yeah, thank you. And with reference to letters, staying on that thread, or notices and letters, when you received something from an agency, a government department, anywhere, from a public office, or even such as anywhere formal, the Criminal and Justice Courts Act of 2015 has got references to sending letters, etc., with intent to cause distress or anxiety. I've put in brackets, I believe on the post, ignorance of the law is no defence, and uttering a false document, sending letters with the intent to cause distress or anxiety. Kevin's talked about the rulings of the wording on certain communications from government agencies like the DWP or the agencies, Atos, Maximus, Capita, all of these subsidiary, agencies, third-party interlopers that the DWP have got in association with. The wording and the rulings there within the notices or the letters or the threats of sanctioning for failure for the respondent, recipient, service user because of various misalignments with claims and things going wrong. That's one side of it. When we talk about distress and anxiety, malicious communications, you've heard Kevin mention before, there is a Malicious Communications Act of 1988, sending letters with intent to cause distress, anxiety. You can check out the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015. We also look at the Companies Act and the Bills of Exchange 1882 for signatory deeds, notices or documents, instruments that need to be executed as a deed. We have talked about the liability, reverse liability, vicarious liability, and authority, as the author has authorised and authored, with autonomy. They've written something to you, but there's the absence of a signature, or in some instances even an autograph, but generally bottom left black signature. There's no authority from the author. So the letter, the notice, the communication, or even the instrument without the signature would not be executed as a deed. So we reference the company, and we reference the Bills of Exchange, and we also reference the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015 for and uttering. It's a crime at common law level. I'm not going to get into it all now, but we see that the failure or the absence of any authority in the form of a signature from the office is for various reasons. We are able to then argue back that there is, as I've encapsulated there, lack of, and so it's null and void. Over to you, Kevin. John's just entered the waiting room. We'll let him in a minute.
Yeah, I've just done what you did, lost the plot.
Malicious communication signatures.
Yeah, malicious communications. That's covered GDPR as well. There's a Malicious Communications Act. It's also referenced in GDPR. Not DPA, but definitely GDPR. For instance, like when we take people through the assessment thing. So if you start asking questions of the assessor, and basically they'll send a communication to the DWP, for want of a better term, these people aren't playing ball, and then on that communication, the DWP sanction you. That's malicious, because you have no obligation to deal with those people. So it's set out in GDPR as well. And yeah, anything obtaining money, as I say, debt collectors, all the rest of it, that's a malicious communication.
Officers turning up with alleged warrants on iPads, aiding and abetting for civil matters, private corporations to enforce fine, fees, forfeitures and levies. Then we could look at the absence of a true writ and a judge's legible name and signature, and we'll loosely term it as warrants. We could say that uttering there, involving a person with the intent to defraud that knowingly sells, publishes or passes a forged or counterfeited document. Forgery comes into it, creating a falsified document, and uttering is the act of knowingly, we'll say, passing on or using the forged documents. So part of the tricks of the trade, tricks and traps that we found to talk to debt collectors for civil matters where officers are present, and we need to let the officers know that they're now complicit if they're aiding and abetting, and they're ultra vires out of the jurisdiction. These are civil matters. They have no jurisdiction. They're there for a breach of the peace only. And we then have to get into issues of have you got your warrant cards with you, and we on the other side of it, if you don't want to identify yourself and you're going to start looking like you're going to be impersonating documents, forgery, counterfeited documents, iPads, sometimes initiates you yourselves have even rang up the alleged issuing court, and there's no record of any outstanding warrant, and if there was, then the police wouldn't be there in a civil matter, they'd be there in a allegedly criminal matter, they say criminal offence, and they would have full jurisdiction and authority to start arresting and detaining, rather than giving you options and questionings and asking you to open the door, rather than forcing their way in with the strength of on the back of the court writ warrant that they would have as possible sheriffs of the court. So it goes deep into other areas, as well as uttering in itself. You can be caught uttering as well. It's a vice versa two-way street there. So it's just something to bear in mind there. We're off, aren't we now? We're rocking and rolling. I like it. We have a guest joining us. We're going to just call him Brother John. We'll admit him and let him know he's live, and then we'll take some input from him and read the room as well. Bear with me, fam, alright. Let me see if this holds up, if it works. Press admit. 1 second. We'll put it on speaker view. It's just connecting to the audio now, so bear with us while. Hello John, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining myself and Kevin. We are live on Tube. Don't say buck or bugger.
Bugger.
Oh wow, if you'd like to introduce yourself and say hello Brother John, you're welcome to. Welcome to the show, and good evening, bro.
You're muted, John, by the way. Your microphone's. You don't have to talk. It's up to you, but your microphone's muted.
Yeah. There we go.
Is it unmuted now?
No, you're all good, mate.
Oh, excellent. Oh, well, welcome, guys. And thank you very much for the invitation. And really nice to actually speak to you face to face for a change. Oh, and look at that, David.
Oh, bless you. Champion. Proper bow.
Yeah, it just came the other day. I was really happy with that. But I actually, when I ordered it about 4 days before I was due to be in court, because I wanted to wear it to go to court with. I thought it might have added a bit of gravitas, but as it was, the court case was only 3 minutes from start to finish anyway. And I was very polite, and I went in and I said, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Could we just have some introductions, please? Can I have your names? And the clerk of the court said, I'm asking the questions and I want your name. I said, okay, but I think I just asked you a question first. Can I have your name, please? He said, I'm asking the questions. What's your name? I said, well, I'm John. Can I have your name, please? He said, I want your full name. I said, my full name's John. Can I have your name, please? The name that's copyrighted by the Crown is Haig, but that's not mine. So, and it just went on like this. But eventually when it got to the magistrate and I asked her name, she said, magistrate, and spelt it. I said, can I have your name, please, madam? She said, no, you can't. I said, are you refusing to give your name? She said, yes, I am. All rise. That's the end of this matter. I walked out. I was like, what just happened there? It's crazy.
They don't like being formal, and it's only right, prim and proper, courteous before we get into business. As we would, as we say, we see that courts are by extension banks in themselves, bench, banker, the arbiter there in the place of the business venue, as Halsbury's would say, administrative hearings and etc. But yes, it's just good manners, isn't it, to have introductions if you've got nothing to hide and you're there on bona fide, legitimate, legal, even lawful reasons in a high court, royal courts, scenario. Then this is not frowned upon, and it's custom and practice before you do business to know who you're doing business with. And like you said, if they're going to ask you to present or for a name in itself of the defendant, then we stop everything as Kevin's done previously and had experience with this as well, John. And it's seldom met with acceptance, but unwilling to say the least is what they are to identify, which is it's remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I think the problem was I'd given them. I don't know whether this is the problem or not, but I'd sent them a bill for transporting a vessel to the place of business for £6,500, which was to drive from Carlisle at £600 an hour and £1.50 a mile, and a full itemised list, and said that's how much I'm charging, and I'll expect to be picking that up in cash when I arrive at the court. And so I went into the court to get that, and never even got past what's your name.
Rude.
Well, I say, like we said earlier, John, if they won't identify, that's the end of jurisdiction. Job done.
Indeed.
They're claiming they're judging you. Of course, you have a right to know they are. If they won't identify, see you later.
Indeed. I mean, they're also only doing business with the name. The man's absolutely immaterial. All they need to do is get the man to say, yes, I'm that, so they can pin the liability on you. So if the name's not presented, there's no liability anywhere. Which, I'm not a big fan of the Emma-Vans, but I mean, that's really what she does. They can't pin any liability on them because they're not presenting a name that they can do business with. And even I don't know if I'm right or not, but the syntax grammar stuff, which it's all right and it's interesting, but really you're doing exactly the same again. But that's not the name. When you start speaking in syntax grammar, you're basically speaking gobbledygook. And they're speaking legalese, and if you're not speaking a language they can recognise, then they can't contract.
Yeah, that's grounds enough. I don't speak that, and I don't speak Japanese, Chinese, or legalese.
Yeah, there was an interesting word that I've spent. I spent the last kind of 48 hours with my nose deep in Black's Law Dictionary's first edition, to try to get some gravitas and understand what the hell's going on with the other problems that I've got going on. But an interesting word I came up with was jargon. That's a really phenomenal one. If you walk into court and say, I'm sorry, I don't speak your jargon, you also stop them being able to contract, because jargon is a colloquial communication language that's unique to a small group. So it's about defrocking them effectively.
Yes.
Not that they're frocked in the first place, the bastards.
It's a private society's language. So the Law Society, the Templars Law Society of the corporate city of London, have the copyright. When we look at Crown copyright language and we look at language in itself, in some instances notices. We look at the semantics of them as well, of the language, and the Oxford English Dictionary is how our English language is interpreted, implied meanings and definitions. And then we've learnt it's from the offset, from police officers, traffic officers, constables, anybody who's in a public office, a commercial basis, generally legal and definitely court-based. If you're communicating with others that are in the legal profession, we are not licensed, any of us. We're not attorneys, we're not lawyers, barristers, we're laymen at best, and we have to point out, for the purposes of clarity and the avoidances of doubt, then this notice and my communications and interjections or language, the correspondence and communication from this side is coming to you using the Oxford English Dictionary, implied meanings and definitions. And we've come to learn that the legalese language of the Templars Inner City London Society is obviously terms and definitions and interpretations are from Black's Law Dictionary. So we've got a deficit and a handicap, and we are then, if you look at the term idiot, I believe in Black's Law Dictionary, one of the breakdowns of it is one that is not licensed or knowledgeable within legalese. So the term for idiot in Oxford and Cambridge is, as we know it, low to do with low IQ. But in the legalese dictionary, it would be, if I'm paraphrasing it correctly from memory, one that is not licensed and aware in legalese. So you are. It's good to point that out because it's just another little hurdle that needs to be. It's very deceptive. It's a weapon of mass destruction, distraction, and we then can move forward. We talk about those maxims of clean hands and honour. It's just principle again. It's good custom and practice. Are you speaking my language? Are we on the same page? No, we're not. So we haven't got foreign, because it's a foreign corporation that's not part of the United Kingdom itself. It's not part of United Kingdom of Great Britain. It's not part of England, London inner city with its own police and postcode and its own jurisdiction as a separate landmass. So really, in essence, aside from the language there, we would actually need some kind of a foreign treaty to be able to interject with them and do business, which is why then they ask for the representation of their person to be present, because that's then the joinder side of things for them to have their inherent authority and jurisdiction over that which is their crown copyright instrument. Our agent in commerce is our person. Doing business as the Mr. or Mrs. all caps is how the game then gets set afoot with the. I've said too much, but over to John and Kevin. Yeah.
I don't think you've said too much, David. I think that was very eloquent in what you were saying there. And as far as the thing, I've always had a problem in a court setting presenting, because I've always gone in and said, I'm not the person, but I was actually quite incompetent and not really understanding what my position was. So I think if I'm in my sort of investigations over the last couple of days, the way to present in court is to go in saying that you're a representative that's appointed, that basically your name's got three different ways of being written. It's in diminution minima, media, and maxima. And in minima, it's all in small letters. Obviously, in media, it's your first name's in small letters and your last name's capitalized. And maxima, your last name's capitalized. So the way I've just written a notice now is that I can't exactly remember the wording I've used, but it's I, John Haig, with the colons, the man appointed the office of Mr. John Haig in media, small and large, acting for the person, Mr. John Haig. And I think that's the way to introduce yourself so that they can actually listen to you. Because the other side of that is they're a corporation and you're an individual. And under the rules of corporations, only corporations can do business with corporations. So I think this is why they use all of those tricks and snags to try to snare you into identifying as the person, just to allow them to do their commercial business and rinse your security account.
Yeah, we are being discriminated against by the United Kingdom's administrative directorate, judiciary, and the agents of public officers, generals, ministers, principals, executives, doctors, health departments, the government departments, all of them. It's are you legally trained is a question I've asked police officers and constables alike. I've once asked it, in a court, and they refused to ask when we was in Oxford, whom here is legally trained and what are your legal qualifications and what institution are you licensed and governed with for regulation. And the magistrates just said we are legally capable, and so that was sufficient answer for us to know that they're not legally trained at all. The officers being on the roadside, not being legally trained. So we're there in a lawful capacity, and we've got the lawful trying to rebut and lawful remedy to legal situations, implementing these barriers before we get in there and we start arguing. They know the game and they're well trained. Some of us get labelled a free man and we have to stop them again and say I'd like to believe I'm a free man, but I'm not a free man of the land. I'm here today, and that's another quick little turn that they like to take. We've got a free man of the land in the court today, and we're like, actually, we're at court, we're not in court, and I'm not a free man of the land. I am freeborn, man David, and I have my agent here today. You know, we're here for the administration of justice. Can I just stop everybody? And you know, and that's something that they quickly revert to, isn't it? To try to belittle us because we're holding them to account. Anybody had experience with that?
Do you remember the recording that I sent you of when I in court? That's exactly what the clerk of the court said to me. He said, "I know that you're a free man on the land." I said, "I beg your pardon. I absolutely reject and rebut that statement. I object. Kindly retract that statement, sir." And he wouldn't. So I wrote a letter into the court, basically stating that as far as I was concerned, that I was profiled. I was profiled and compared to a criminal who shot a policeman in Canada. And well, the next thing that I got was a notice of discontinuance of the case.
Oh, really? Well done. Yeah, that's a good effort. That's a good effort. If they've decided to discontinue it, then that's as good. It's not as brilliant as it could be, but it's good enough. It's getting it. It's more or less discharge. They're discharging it by discontinuing it. So it's not a discharge, but yeah, that's a good effort. That's a good result if you've got that. Yeah.
Well, that was the result. And but I did. Do you remember listening to the recording?
Yes, last year it was September, October time. If it's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
maybe.
that's right.
John, yeah.
But it was entertaining. It was a hoot. When I'm feeling a bit miserable, I do put that recording on again just for entertainment purposes. It's really funny.
Are they, it comes down to if you're legally trained and you're speaking Black's law and if you don't know what language you're speaking, we'll point out that you are considered to be speaking legalese, and we need to know and draw your attention to what a person is, a company, a corporation. And there is, if we go past Black's law and legal, and we go one up to scripture, as it's a Christian nation and there are Bibles within courts, then we also point out that the whole legal system of the Londinium Templars is based on the New World Testament itself, with the various commerce, law of commerce, Exodus, and the wherever two or more are gathered in my name, then I am there in the midst of them. It's Romans, I believe, 2:11, for there is no respect of persons with God. You've also got Acts, I think, chapter 10, verse 34, 35, and Peter opening his mouth of a truth and perceive that God is no respecter of persons. And then we go furthermore into Psalms, and we look at, I think, the 82nd Psalm. Have I not said that ye are all gods? And so if it is enshrined, our rights and freedoms are enshrined in various areas of law, human rights and legislation, and Mosaic and Abrahamic law of a Christian nation, and the law being based on the Bible, then we can point out to them that it is simply not vexatious or arrogant. They are to respect our belief, our religious, political and social beliefs and our covenants there, that if we are all in the image of the Creator, and JC was quoted in the 82nd Psalm as saying, ye are all gods, and God be no respecter of person, then we will now be wanting to present and implement our agent in commerce today, the person, and we have got more than a free man stance and a constitutional stance. We've got international treaties and accords to call upon. We've got United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 6. We've got legal argumentation. So then it becomes a little bit. This is why it's good to have paperwork given to various courts and officers, generals, ministers, secretaries, to have this pointed out, to do a little bit of the legwork first, so then it's not trying to have an argument because they're limited on time and they want to make money, and if they see that there's going to be a slowdown and holding them to account, and the process isn't going to go smoothly for them, and you're not going to bow down and obey and agree to the full public commercial liabilities appointed to your person, and you're going to want to do business and conduct business correctly and manage your estate, the estate administration, bringing in the SETA K and SETA KV, and all of what I've said there, you see that was already took us several minutes, and it will piss a great many magistrates and district and county, even high courts, off a little bit, and they're there to make money. So the paperwork would then be, I refer, if you're in any doubt, all the sources and references and appendixes are there in my paperwork. I refer you to my paperwork. Do not try to deviate from the subject matter and get caught into argumentation and things which are futile, when the paperwork will have been already the conditional acceptance, keeping in clean hands, keeping in honour, moving the way that we've learned to move now. It's all in the paperwork for you to, if there's any doubt of anything, I suggest we have an adjournment and you familiarise yourself with the particulars of the case and the paperwork, and when you're ready we can come back and decide whether or not this case has any validity, if there is any standing for this motion, and if not, then in your case there, a motion to dismiss or move it to the correct jurisdiction. If the claimant is in dishonour and due process has not been followed and there's been breaches, there is no case to answer, and things like this. So then therefore we've learned to manage this a little bit more technical, and if you haven't done any paperwork and you're in the venue, then sometimes you may not get things go your way. They may issue a summary judgment of which you would need to counter that in some way and look at, no judge's decisions are final, and repeals or appeals or judicial reviews can be obtained before miscarriages of justice and things like that. So Anders has joined. I'll let him in and let you two chat as well. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly, Andy, how you doing, mate? Claire Randall, Mickey Barnes, there he is, all right, Mike? I think Claire M was in earlier as well. Just make sure everybody's had a shout on the...
Stephen Morebricks is in.
Simon.
I see Stephen's in there giving some concise comments out as well.
Yeah. Simon's in. How you doing, Simon? I think
Mia
not there at the moment.
Mia.
Oh yes, of course. I haven't seen Mia for ages. Hello, Mia. How you doing?
I've seen her there.
Hiding.
Saturday night.
Oh yeah, there she is. Lost access to the Telegram. What, have you upset them as well, Mia?
I had an absolute nightmare when I was trying to get on here because somehow my computer had lost the password to go into Zoom, and I had to restart my phone because that's my internet, and then restart the computer, and then go into my emails and reset the password. It was a nightmare. But I'm here. I'm happy to be here.
There's Anders. Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm just fine. How are you all?
Hey, we're good. Good to see you.
Long time, mate. Long time.
Yeah, where have you been,
Oh, hiding. No, just it's just been so quiet, I say just life getting in the way, and Dave at servitude, so sometimes he's only off in the week, and we've just been like that, really. It's just not finding the time, just making everything mesh together, and it has tonight. But yeah, it's been too long since we've all been in, and just to shoot the breeze. And this wasn't planned. I spoke to Dave a couple of days ago and just said, look, if you're up for it, try and do something, because it's been a little while since we've been in. So it's just to let you all know we're still alive and kicking, and life's getting in the way like it does, but it just seems to have got in the way a little bit more recently.
Yeah, that's how it is. I have been to a meeting today, and we was talking about free energy, not free energy, but freer energy. And that was a nice meeting. And we're going to talk more about that. And we was coming into the sovereign piece too. And then it shows up that one of these people there at the meeting, they have 35,000 followers. So it's a good
Nice.
thing, you know, if it comes out now with it TNEM and SPLS Pro Sweden here. So
Working,
yeah, I
network,
had a good day.
doing what you do best.
Excellent.
Anders, you are an excellent networker. You're a very intelligent and clever man. You're well loved by many, if not all, that to come to meet you. I hold you in high regard. I love you lots, and I'm very proud of what we can potentially look at doing here. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about our interactions. And you manage things very well. And I know you're worried about your English and certain things like that, but I think you do a brilliant job. Your
Yeah.
English is much better than my Swedish. And bless you, brother.
Yeah, and my Swedish too. No, you've got no problem with the language, Anders.
The only thing I can say in Swedish is "abba."
And that is not even a word. It's
I know, it was a joke.
yeah. Yeah. How many is on it tonight here on the tube?
I don't know, 20 or so, I think.
No, yeah, about 19 showing up on mine at the moment. 20, but they were sort of didn't announce anything until earlier today. It's just say, come on, show of faces, no real plan.
Yeah.
Just see what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
I can mention that we have started the discussions with starting up TNEM in England now too. And we are not going to say much more about that yet, but it's going to come. It's going to happen in England too. So it's going to be a good thing, this.
Excellent.
Yes.
Fair
Is
play,
it
mate.
Is it appropriate to be speaking about the research that I've been doing and the solution I've come up with, do you think, Kevin, at the moment?
I don't see why not. I have given David a brief synopsis, so I don't have any objections.
No, carry on, yeah, by all means, please, John, yeah.
Well, I started basically because of this nightmare problem that I've got going on in Portugal, and arrest warrants out for my partner to be apprehending her daughter and locking her back up in a children's home. I just felt like a slave, like I couldn't do anything. So the act that basically outlawed slavery, I think it was the Emancipation Act, was it? Basically said slavery is now made illegal in all its forms. And I thought, well, what could that mean with all its forms? So I started with the latest version of the Black's Law Dictionary, just scrolling through it to see, and I did a search for form and forms. And there was just so much nonsense, and all of the salient information seemed to be lost. So I went back to 5th and then 4th, and eventually I found myself at the 1st edition, and I did a search on the word form in Black's First. And wow, I just came up with some blinded information, which basically is the forms are the forms that we fill in. And at the end of the day, we are all willing volunteers. And the scenario I was giving to Kevin earlier was when a policeman comes and stops you in the car and you see the blue lights, he comes to you and basically says, can I see your driving license? And we all, because of our conditioning at school and so on, just go, yeah, fine, right, no problem. Pull our license out and give it in because we feel we've got nothing to hide. Not actually realizing that there's a covert cash extrapolation business going on that we're not really privy to unless we're sort of in this group and we know what's going on. But I figured that the only right that we have is to contract. That's really the only thing that we can do, which is how we're able to go to the supermarkets and the shops and buy petrol and everything else. We're allowed to do commercial contracts, and that's enshrined in the Bill of Rights 1688 and a number of other bits and pieces. So what stops us from contracting with these people? And so that my scenario that I put to Kevin earlier was the policeman comes to the car and says, can I see your driving license? And the response ought to be, thank you for purchasing my time, officer. My my fee for providing services and products to Her Majesty's offices are £10,000 an hour paid up front plus a liability waiver right now, or go and get back in your car. And obviously that's going to poke him in the ribs and he's going to start getting quite nasty about it. But the salient point here is, if you say something like that and then you don't stick to your guns, you're basically undoing your own contract. If the guy's on the other side there with his baton out and he says, "Get out the car, I'm going to smash the window," and you say, "Did you not hear what I just said? It's £10,000 an hour up front and a liability waiver right now, or I'm not doing anything." And unfortunately, we are going to have to, in that scenario, we are going to have to be roped out of the car and taken to the police station. But you can't say anything. You can't comply. Don't even accept a glass of water until you get in front of the magistrate. And that's all you need to say to the magistrate. I've just been pressed into service of Her Majesty the Queen here. I told the man what my terms of service were. He dragged me out of the car. He brought me here. Are you paying me? It was actually £10,000 an hour. Minimum 3 hours, but now I've been in the cells for the last 12 hours. You owe me £120,000. Who's paying? And don't say another word. And if they don't pay, they are automatically guilty of slavery.
I just don't think it's working, it's not working that way. I don't think it helps to argue with the police or anything. I think what's helping is all the paperwork we are doing. That is the big thing, when we go over the head of the police and everybody else, I think that's the solution.
Well, I think, yes, you're right, up to a point, I think. But if you were to, for example, if you were to present to the policeman at the window, those are my fees for service, unless you're pressing me into involuntary service, which is actually called slavery, officer. Is that what you're doing? I mean, if you were to tell him that, all of a sudden he's going to have to go and speak to his superior officer. And if I'm right, and believe me, I've been right through this law book trying to get the solution. And in some ways, that's absolutely taking control of your person, because you're contracting for your business. They're doing business on behalf of the Queen. You're doing business on behalf of you, and you've got every right to do that. So if they're going to be basically running roughshod over your right, I mean, I think there's a maxim in law which states, one who does not assert one's right has none. Is there not?
Yeah, the one that does not assert his rights is deemed to have none. Yes.
Okay, so surely what you're doing is you're exercising your right to contract. Just the fact that he's wearing some fancy dress, I don't know whether this has got gravitas or not. It's just that it's all, to me, the final piece of the jigsaw dropped in and a light went on in my head and went, oh my God, that's it.
Equity aids the vigilant and not the indolent, not the one that slumbers on his rights. But you are needing to assert your rights, the assumptions and presumptions that the jurisdictions have, the jurisprudence is the courts themselves assume and presume. Everything is, when one assumes, you make an ass out of you and me. You'd have to try to make things reasonable and operate yourself in the private. The private holds the key. If you could deem it reasonable for setting a schedule of fees for any and all civil matters that are not concerning you, and they would argue contract law and duties and obligations. It's about being obliged. Am I obliged? Are we obliged to? For civil matters, you would then need to halt some. Yeah, we have got like a. I don't like the word unilateral, because no agreement could ever be unilateral. An agreement needs to be at least bilateral, because it's an agreement. It's not an agreement if it's one way, but we have these unilateral agreements given to us by the common law duties and obligations, and to some extent, if it's not going to harm and cause damage to us, we would be honourable in our conduct and business, and even in a private capacity for civil matters, ultimately, and manage this to clear up the controversies surrounding the name itself, the person. But then there are lines and there are limits, so you would need to have relevant, sufficient paperwork. I've drafted up and put together with the evidence of life and essence paperwork, like unilateral non-disclosure agreement and fee schedule, so you would serve that to them. Having paperwork with you at all times is a bit annoying, but if you are going, like you said, you need to be prepared to live this life and to hold them to account and point out you're in a private capacity, and for all civil administrative offences that would cause the controversies are surrounding, then you would need to be able to demonstrate a fair and just administration process for being stopped in the pursuit of for civil matters. And if you're not obliged to and you're forced to, then yeah, it would come under forms of slavery and ignorance of the rights, the various rights, you know, and you can't enforce something of which you don't make the other party aware of, or knowing they've got to know of the impending liabilities that they're about to incur by choosing they have a certain amount of discretion that they can choose. They're the ones that are out. The officers will say, as you've mentioned, officers are out in the public area, arena, in the public, and they're choosing to conduct themselves in a particular way. So therefore, once you've got these certain propositions and agreements, do we agree, will you agree, then I suppose under contract law in itself, or loosely termed contract law, you have a verbal agreement, you have a verbal contract, and then they would probably say whatever, because they've got no intent on paying it, and the responsibility would be upon you to then later down the line, not just with a magistrate, but going to a high court for a judicial review and putting your claim in the court against the officers and ones that have incurred damages, injury, and seeing that if you can manage to hold everybody to account for using rules and policy to break law and encroach upon rights that are enshrined across various levels and jurisdictions, and hold them, lay your claim and support your claim, and do it in a sufficient way that it would be done against the ones that have perpetrated crimes against man by using rules and policy to commit those crimes, and doing it to them in their full private capacity on the man themselves, not the Met Office or the courts, or in their individual private capacity under their full public liability, indemnity, and that would be the line to go down. So when we talk about estate management and management of sorts, then we have to recognise that we are not persons, and for civil matters where there is no victim and there is no crime, when this corporation of the United Kingdom and its crown agents of the crown go out to try to incur fines, fees, forfeitures and levies against private men and women of the landmass, and they choose to ignore, then you're right in what you're saying, because then you've in a loose premise. That's essentially the crux of the matter, and we need more people to come to chat with us and to recognise, to know thyself and to know thy foe, and to be able to articulate things in such a logical, concise, irrefutable way that then it would be held to account. And if more of us could have the ability, the knowledge and the resources ultimately to do this, then once a few landmark precedents cases had been set, like we're seeing in the news at the minute, left, right and centre, there are some underdogs coming through and having the law upheld in many ways here. It's not such a far-fetched pipe dream, but it does take a certain calibre and a certain mind and a lot of preparation and honour in a game which is rigged against us, where there is no honour, there is no honourability. It's very hard to get to that stage, but there are private prosecutions by litigants in persons, aka underdogs, that are holding them, the establishment and the agents of the crown, the officers in general, to account. If there was any other area that you would look at other than crimes, it would be forced slavery. So what your key word there was volunteer. When you volunteer, because
And equity.
slavery, forced slavery is illegal, but volunteering and submitting, such as a job application form in some instances, or you use the word form. So when we submit, a wrestler submits and taps out, submit, a below punch. Sub is below, mitten is going on a whim here, but we submit a job application form and we are then giving it to an employer and agreeing to be an employee and work for that corporation. So you have, in essence, submitted your rights voluntarily. So that's a form of slavery in it. We call it servitude then because it's a bit more cleaner, but you volunteered into that. That's not illegal, that's legal. So it's very clever how, when you look into it, they're allowed to get away with. Volunteering was the key again there. Sorry, I'll let you all speak.
No, I just wanted to say there, David, just to tighten up the premise that you were talking about, it comes back to equity. Equity will not aid a volunteer. Well, if you volunteered your driving license, if you volunteered your services, if you volunteered to them, all of your remedies have gone. Then you are in the paperwork realm, in the court realm, and that kind of thing. So, I mean, that's sort of where I'm coming from with it.
There is more to equity will not aid a volunteer. I'll not get into that now, but you're on the right lines, and that's a valid argument. But there is more with regard to trust law. It's not just simply that in itself, but gifts and things like this. It goes into incomplete trusts and non-valid trusts, invalid trusts because of certain things that aren't fulfilled within trust law and what would we sort of call them? The propositions of equity then come into then say, well, volunteer. That's a loosely termed, thing, terminology, a loosely termed situation, but that is part of it. If you don't, like your right to silence, I'll give you another one then, the right to silence. Anything, any caution you don't say now, but you later rely on in court, and you do say will not be able to, anything that you don't, in the caution, the Miranda rights that are read, or the caution for us, we are warned. But basically they want us to inform on ourselves in a way. If they arrest, they must have the grounds, reasonable grounds, suspicion and a valid reason for making an arrest, and if they have, then they wouldn't need anything from us at that moment of arrest for us to inform them of. They should be, he who makes the claim is duly obliged to provide the burden of proof or the material facts of the matter. So when you start to volunteer in that instance as well, you see, you shouldn't volunteer. You should retain your rights, reserve your rights, and for the instance, under no uncertain terms and circumstances would you deal with the police in an arrest situation and volunteer information freely to them. You would a wise man would keep stum and let them present the particulars of their claim and the facts of the matter at hand, and then once you've had their side of the story, you would then be wise to take lawful or if you can't, then legal advice there, and get with a brief and then go through in private the particulars of the claim that they've given upon the point of arrest. So it's a very, again, volunteering information. You try to be honourable and you do it because you want to, appease them and you want to make things better, but they will take information and you will often fill gaps. They will give birth to pregnant pauses and things like this happen, and before long you've got yourself in hot water by trying to clear your name. So again, it's volunteering in that respect is very dangerous.
But firstly, you need to volunteer the driving license, and that's where I think that's the voluntary act. If you state the terms and conditions before presenting that, then they have a choice. They can either accept the contract or they can leave. If they decide to press on, they are pressing you into service of Her Majesty the Queen. So their hands are completely tied. And that's the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, you let them know that you implement the instrumentation, and you present your driver on the general purpose vehicle, the vehicle being the counterpart plastic card, and you let them know again what language are you speaking, and You know, are you trained legally? No, you're not legally trained. You're speaking legalese. We're here with Oxford English, and I'm presenting you my driver. You've asked me the question, am I the driver? My answer is no, I'm not the driver. There is my driver. It is not a benefit for me. You know, I'm not in a commercial capacity. We're not working for the government. We're not getting paid. I'm privately travelling. Yes, I have a driver with me. You know, there wasn't full disclosure at the point of getting a driving license about what's happening there. The facts of the matter weren't presented to us, so a legally binding agreement, contract, and what you know, words such as this was not effected. You know, it is our understanding that we have a driver for commercial purposes. If we're not in a commercial capacity, yes, and you've asked me, they ask you the question, are you the driver? Then you've got an option to say yes or no. If you're driving a 40-foot articulated lorry and you're delivering something, then you can still present your driver. Just because you're in a commercial capacity doesn't mean to say that you have to be the driver. You can still present that card and say, there is my driver. You can still mitigate and limit the liabilities with regards to that instrumentation. You know, the statutes and acts that are passed are there to govern government employees and those that work for the government, you know, as such there. So we, you know, is this your vehicle? No, it's private property. And so we have to, yeah, be very careful and hold them to account and ask them certain questions there with regards to, you know, when we can reference Halsbury's and certain other publications as well as Black's Law. You know, we got Blackstones, you got Bouvier's to different countries and so forth. So England reference would be Halsbury's 14th edition. Acts and statutes are legislative rules of society given the force of law by the consent of the governed. So they are not law, and no government act can be passed to legitimise them. In Halsbury's 14th edition, the law is absolutely clear on this subject. No administrative court has any authority in this country, and no government act can be passed to legitimise them because of the constitutional restraints placed on the monarch at her coronation, lest we forget, you know. So we reference precisely from the source there and give you the information for consideration. Feel free to check it out. We have Halsbury's in the resource library of SPLS Pro for private, you know, research, and we need to look at processes that elicit, you know, emotion and rational associations based on individuals' moral. We have a philosophy or value system, and we have consciences that stands in contrast, and we need to look to fight this system that's had it one-sided and way too easy for so long, and they are not honourable and they are deceitful. Then they use the dark arts to try to, you know, they should be out doing more positive duties with regards to crime, paedophilia, rape, missing children, robberies, things that actually are a concern of a public interest, rather than trying to generate revenue from private, honourable, good souls that basically haven't got a penny to spare at this moment in time. You know, fair's fair, and we respect the rights of these private societies and you know, secret societies and government institutions and related agencies, but the way that they're playing business now, enough is enough, you know, and that's why we rely so much on the concept of equity and equality, and we talk about conscience and unconscionability. The collective through the law on proprietary estoppel, that's a great thing that we've learned to deal with recently, and alongside the constitution of trust. So you know, once you get into this game, you never know where you're going, but where we've ended up, we're in a very strong, honourable place, and you should all be very proud of yourselves, and I love you very much.
I have a question. Here. If this gonna succeed, what is the best way to do? As it is now, everybody having their own case for it. Nobody is, almost no one is succeeding without driving without license, you know? So I'm thinking, isn't it better to do a mass trial with lots of people? Because if that goes through, that would be a case law. and then people they can show up that when I'm traveling, I don't need a driving license. So I'm just wondering, wouldn't that be a better thing to concentrate on than to do all these small cases by themselves? You are by yourself, they just drive over you. But if there is a bigger amount of people doing this, taking it up to the court, wouldn't that be better?
A load. We've had disclosure from the government defence departments, yes, regarding UFO and UAPs, and they've actually admitted and said on many levels now there's been millions of pages brought out in the Freedom of Information Act. The pressure, the National Press Association and GRIA and the gang they've done some work. There has been, you can't deny, over the last 2 to 5 to especially the last 2 years, there is a disclosure happening. Got like a little UFO above my head here for this little Buddhist temple, the background I have, yeah. So in legal terms, there is such things as aliens, illegal alien. You've heard of the term alien, haven't you? So we need to, the part of our sovereignty movement is exactly that, what you've just said. We need more of us to exist privately as men and women, as authentic men and women that aren't operating commercially, that have agents in the form of our persons, and we are trying to teach our brothers and sisters across the world, internationally, how best to exist lawfully and legally, and what the differences are between legal and lawful. And you've got LAW as in lawful, and you've got LORE as in folklore lawful, so we are always able to remain in the private whilst facing public commercial officers, because that's all that is outside. And even when we're in a private capacity, driving is seldom done by any of us. Drover, it comes from sheep and shepherds and chattel, the drover of the flock of the folk. So the etymological references and the wordplay is just, it's mind bending. But to keep it simple, I would say, as the governor of SPLS Pro, that's exactly what we're trying to do. But we would need to first protect property before even trying to do a stunt like that. Yes, there would be a mass salvage by the Crown agents, and the state. The state itself would just love to take away and impound and charge and fine and look to make money, in fines, fees and forfeits by taking property. So we'd have to be very clever and intellectual about what we did and how we did it. But that's essentially what we are doing. Our movement itself, our intellectual freedom thought movement, and why we are arguing that we're not existing as legal public commercial persons operating in commerce. We are lawful private men and women operating non-commercially, but with an agent, a person, a business, a corporation, which is our name, date of birth, surname, national insurance number. And we need to get this this disclosure needs to happen now. And then once we've done that en masse, enough of us, we would then form our own private society that would be like the Mormons, like the Amish, like the Romany Gypsies, like travellers that don't have the registration and the crown recognition, and we would be exempt from legal proceedings. You would still have duties and obligations at a common law level, and if you committed a crime or did any damage, you would need to pay. We're not saying that we are above the law, or that the law, when I say law, what law do I speak of? The London Templars commercial legal law. What I'm saying is that it's we follow the Mosaic Abrahamic laws, we follow the common law of the land. And we don't so much need to be enshrined or wrapped up with the rest of the bullshit, do we?
Yeah, but there's a good thing here that we have TNEM. That is a faith society that is actually belonging with, yeah, not belonging, but is incorporated. No, it's not even incorporated. What is the right name? what is our relationship with SPLS Pro and TNEM?
We have a union, I would like to call it. A union maybe is a different word. Instead of incorporated, we're not in corporations and in business. We have a union, an agreement, a covenant, a pact. Yeah, things like this. These kind of non-commercial, non-legal,
We have a trust, don't we?
non-trust. Yeah, private trust.
Yeah.
Bakes your brain, doesn't it? All of this madness that's going on and deception and skullduggery, literally skull and bones fraternity, the bloodlines, the families, the manipulation of society that's gone off over the years.
Yeah, it was one interesting thing with this meeting that I had today, because there was also having an community shop there where you was paying money, but then you get points. It was called ferry money. And those ferry money, they was points. So you will have these points when you are shopping there, or if you're putting in things there like eggs or milk or something, you know. So it was a brilliant thing, and they want to start this society by their own too. And I was telling them about the trust, how it could work, that they could take it through TNEM, and when that's registered in England, those trusts will be secured by TNEM England. So it would be a good thing, you know. All this, I see we can help each other so much around here, you know. If we stop concentrate on speeding tickets and driving license.
Well, we are doing multiple things. Each one has a reason for being with us, for having a chat with us, for coming to our Telegram, Facebook, private domain. They've all got their own public duties and obligations and liabilities within themselves, but ultimately all the ones that Kevin, you, John, the admins meet and what we chat to, everybody wants to be able to exist privately, to boycott the big banks and institutions, financial and religious and educational, are the three main big ones, and we want to exist officially, privately, recognised, peacefully, separate too, and we want to start managing things in our community with regards to that, our young stars, our future young stars, our offspring, you know, and we have got a lot of honourable, intelligent, capable, resourceful sovereigns, initiates, mans and women's around the land that are that want to do that once they've got rid of the threats of the legal pressures, and they've managed to control their property, to control the estate, to administer their estates, to protect their rights and find their equitable rights. And there is a certain pathway into this, and most are coming from a common law working class level. So unfortunately they are enshrined and they've got a lot of baggage, which is various and many, but it's all civil. There's no criminals here, I might add, but they all do want to exist and start things out within their own communities and work up to managing their estates. When I say that, I mean like council estates now, and where they directly live, farming, agriculture in itself, food, going back to organic, 0 point energy, holistic healing, spiritualism, meditating, mentalism. A great deal of health and wealth there's a possibility. We say our word is our bond, and trust is our one true currency. When we make an agreement with one another, with no lawyers, no courts, no barristers, no notaries, no attorneys, and we make an agreement and we're good to it, and we're good with our word, and our word is our bond. That's worth more than any bit of private banking cartel bits of paper with pictures of the Queen on, and it often pays more as well. So You say that, but and we have got a bit of a catch-22. For us to get to the promised land, we first have got to do a few jobs need to be done, a few battles need to be had, a certain amount. You've got to prove yourself as well, because we don't want narcissists and criminals and the likes coming over to the private to try to dodge things and then take advantage. You know, like the school bully. So we have to do a little bit of vetting as well, and we have to make sure that these agreements come true and that we're getting the right caliber, not criminals or wrong-uns, as we say, unconscionable folk.
Yeah, but that is why I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it like this. We are honorable people, and yet we have to do with criminal stuff. Like it is illegal to drive over the speed limit. It is illegal to park wrong, or yeah, and it is that, you know, and I mean, why the fuck can't people keep the speed, park correctly? That would make it so much easier if they take their fucking responsibility,
It's always one, Anders.
and other stuff. Sorry, but I mean
But
it.
these are all civil matters, and they're not really big fry. You're right. There are bigger and more important things to be concentrating on, and they're not the biggest and most important things. That's why we have admins and groups and chats and templates and videos and things for people to go and look at. And and to argue with the civil court practice, the civil procedure rules, keeping clean hands, conditional acceptances. We've given the information and the ways of means of how to deal with this, but that's the way that the legal system works. It goes for the low hanging fruit. It's not an honourable gladiator. I'm sorry to go Roman here, but that's all I can grasp. It's not an honourable gladiator picking a fight with another honourable gladiator. It's a massive giant Brutus Maximus going around looking for the smallest, little, weakest opponents that it can find to get an easy fix. It's the system, the legal system, which is the New World Order, basically. When they've spoken from years ago to present day about the New World Order, what that actually is this legal system, which is the Crown copyright language, which exists in all of the courts and the governments and the codified and non-codified constitutions, whether you admit it and realise it or not. That is the New World Order. That is what's crept in as the Commonwealth has crumbled and independence from other countries has grown stronger. The way that this bloodline and families and oligarchy of narcissistic bullies has kept its stronghold and its ability to have wealth and success is by being underhanded, like with the legalese. Like with the people being imprisoned for civil matters where there is no victim. It goes for the low hanging fruit. It preys on the weak and the ignorant, and I'm classified as part of that. I am weak and ignorant. I know nothing, and I'm just trying to do my best to help, as you all are. But it will go for the low hanging fruit, and that's the way that this battle is going on, which is why it is ungodly, which is why we've had enough of seeing the resources that are spent and how it's spent and the capital gains made whilst we're all trading Federal Reserve and banknotes from a private banking cartel of families. That's why there is a deficit from the government to these private bankers, and why we're all running around trying to cure cancer, running around parks baking cakes and things that are just, it's from the top to the very bottom very wrong. There appears to have been a definable and definite effort to steer human consciousness and awareness into a desired state by the present state institutions and the private Templar Law Society. It's guided our behaviour into a legal and a non-lawful tendencies for us all to stay on their script and away from the very fabric of the global information embedded within the likes of the Holy Scriptures. We found the Codex, I, Kevin, John, a lot of my channel viewers, we found the keys into undoing their magic spells. We found the antidote to that. I'm not saying that the scriptures are bang on or that even Jesus was a real person in himself, but a mystic man with teachings of up on high, like Da Vinci with his codified paintings and messages pointing up, you know, the way that things come to us in this matrix of love and consciousness, energy. Consciousness is what it's about, and they tap into our energy and our consciousness in order for them to gain from us. We talk it as surety for debts and surety for civil public liabilities, for income tax, for council tax, inheritance tax, savings tax, taxes on taxes. Again, it's much like the Romans creating Jesus to tax the Jews in some ways. It's all the same game, but just thousands of years later, you know. So I babbled on. I need to let you all speak, but yeah, we're getting to that point, and we can't get there quick enough. Really, we can't. Which is why we ask for support and help, and for you to try to pledge £12 to our domain or join other type community domains that will, you know, trust and that will help us as a single consciousness in the private move forward, get the resources we need.
Yeah, but we are running around. Why are we not getting the step up? That's what I'm saying here, you know. Get a step up over that Colosseum shit, because that is just theater. That is just to divide us, you know. So that's what I mean too. If we stop arguing with the police and we go up one step and we argue with the court system instead, you know, then they can't divide us there, you know. And it's the same with this breadcrumb theater. It is the same thing. We are the Colosseum. It's us that are doing this theater here, you know. We are the one entertaining the system, you know, because we are making them work, you know. It should be another step. We should go over their head, you know. Hello, we are up here now. We want answers here now. I don't know, but that's what I'm hoping for. And I think everybody's hoping for that too. The right way, the right door, as David said once, you know. Yes.
There was one other thing that I wanted to say, to trying to sort of support the argument that I was making earlier about not necessarily arguing with a policeman, just laying down your terms and conditions. And going back to Black's Law Dictionary, first edition, the definition of free in that book is unconstrained, having power to follow the dictates of his own will, not subject to the dominion of another, not compelled to involuntary servitude, used in the sense as opposed to slave. That's what it says in Black's Law number 1. So involuntary servitude is effectively slavery. So if you're being forced into interaction, even with the policeman at the side of the road, you're being forced into involuntary servitude if you don't present your terms and conditions when you first get the opportunity to communicate.
Sounds, you know, as I say, we were discussing it earlier. Yeah, so that's what I said earlier. Sound as a pound. There it is. You're forced into it in any forms, in all its forms. Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not being paid, being forced to do it. Can't be anything else. Can't be, under its very own definition.
Indeed. And that's their own book.
Yeah. Their little black book, their little legalese book as well. So there you have it, in your own writing, in your own realm. I was just going to say, actually, I did write it down. So I thought I forget. When David mentioned the promised land just shortly ago, when he was speaking, and we're already there. They've just changed the words to promised land. It's the land of promises. That's exactly where we all are now.
Which is why which is why we have to use promissory notes on the currency, which is the currency.
Yeah.
It's all commercial business that they're doing. And that's
Yeah,
when you're
exactly.
when your interactions with the policy enforcement officers, they're only doing commercial business. They're not looking
Yeah.
after the interests of people. They're not protecting anyone. They're not looking after the law. They're just doing commercial business for the court system and the Crown,
Yeah.
which is why
Private
you ought to
revenue
be able to-
collection.
which is why you ought to be able to present your own terms and conditions. And I mean, I don't know what it is, but I seem to have a police magnet on me for some reason. They just want to come and interact. So I'm going to try it next, and I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, nice one, John.
Yeah,
Fair
we
play
have
to you,
more.
mate.
There is a bit of what is it? The 1308 UCC refused to retain rights to be forced to be compelled to perform under contracts which are non-disclosed. That was part of the attraction of the UCC in the
Yeah.
commercial realms that enticed us. 13, Kevin, what are the 1308s and
308.
408s and whatever they are?
Yeah, I said that. I was saying to John earlier. It's the same when you go into the court and you're presenting on behalf of the person. Then UCC, 3402 B1. Same thing, which sets you out as I'm the representative of, but not not the name. I'm the rep for the name, but not the name.
Mm-hmm. So
And
basically,
that's valid because you're in
Going in
commerce, so it's UCC.
so you're going in as the man appointed to the office of for the person of, all
Yeah.
the same name. And that's the idem solemns. It sounds like your
Yeah.
name, it looks like your name, but it isn't your name.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to draw a pin there and say we recognise that there is other laws such as the Lex Mercatoria. That's a big area to have a look at. If you look at the Lex Mercatoria, the law of commerce and the commercial laws, there are various jurisdictions and players which many of you know. So we look at UNIDROIT, we look at Uniform Commercial Codes, we look at the LIBOR Code, we look at treaties and covenants and accords in general, we look at common law, and there is various treaties and agreements by kings and monarchies and the papacy, the Roman crown, if you like, itself, and the subsequent treaties and the laws of Admiralty Maritime, commercial law, and we find that those are the underpinnings of all of these institutions. And when we got presented with Franco Collins' positive law and canons and the actual Vatican canons and certain, you see that depending on what jurisdiction you can recognise is at play. Example, gold trim round a flag in a court and things like this, and there are certain indicators to what jurisdiction you're speaking to, and each jurisdiction has its own rules and codes. So the Corporation of the United Kingdom and the executive administers the directorate have got the ministerial code, one of them. You know, we've got common law of England, we've got constitution, we've got Lex Mercatoria, we've got Admiralty, we've got maritime, we've got, it is a whole mixture of jurisdictions at play, and each one has its own code book for that, its own language, its own constitution in itself. So it's separating them and knowing what to use to how to repel and dispel the spells that are being cast upon us.
Could I just take the conversation a step sideways? I've got another, it's not really an issue, but it's an observation that I've just got. I couldn't find my old birth certificate, so I applied for a new one because I figured, well, I didn't know really what I was going to do with it, but I figured I needed it in my hand. And I got the birth certificate, the new copy. And then I found the photocopy of the old one that I had. And the thing that I thought was quite interesting was it says on the bottom in red that this document can't be, what does it say there? Any person who falsifies any of the particulars on this certificate is liable to prosecution. And unfortunately, somebody has falsified the particulars on it, because on the original, my father wrote all of the names, and he wrote my name in small letters, and his name in small letters, and my mother's name and her maiden name all in small letters. And on the new copy that I've got, they're all written in capitals. Does anybody know anything or say anything about the significance of that? Falsifying a security instrument?
Well, certainly. I mean, it's not, as it says on the new one, this is a certified copy of the original, but it's clearly not.
Indeed.
And then you just read the bit about anybody changing it, and it's clearly been changed.
Sure. And I've got evidence to prove it. So, but the thing is, who is it I'm taking on? I'm not, you know what? Who would even have the authority to go into the original register and change it? Because it's written in handwriting as well. It's been written in, somebody's actually written it in block capital letters, because it's you know, it's written in handwriting. It's not like a
Registrar General,
Registrar.
possibly.
Yeah. Registrar General, yeah, is where it comes from.
He's the top
These
boy, isn't he?
certificates are not issued. They've never been issued as evidence of identity, but they can be used for certain institutions will take them as evidence of identity. They weren't issued. Future security interests, security instruments aren't for evidence of identity, but various institutions will allow them to be used as, if you agree and say willingly and you volunteer to be the legal person, and the corporation, it's a business, it's a corporation, it's your corporation, a franchise of the United Kingdom Corporation, isn't it? So you've got the fact that these were never issued as evidence of identity, but they have been commonly known to be used and taken for evidence of identity, and that's one of the biggest mistakes that we've all made when we weren't duly informed, when Mum pledged you know, the original foundation document instrument at the time of registration. You have the certificate of live birth, and then you have the birth certificate that's created secondary, and that's an extract from an entry in a book. What we've got, but it's their club and it's their gang. They will. The game is afoot, isn't it? You could even argue that it's got David and middle name lowercase, and then it's got my father's name Hanlon in capitals. And you go back to the teachings of the scriptures and the mystic man JC, he shall not take the father's name in vain, and the father's name Hanlon, or on most certificates in whatever box number it is all capital. And you've got the forms of the language that is used there for the particular jurisdiction. So when we look at capitalization and the status, the styles that are used there, what is capitals, what is hyphenated capitals? You've got Latin, ancient Latin, dog Latin, pig Latin, you know, and so for different jurisdictions, that language is appropriate for that particular institution's constitution. And so therefore it's an indication, much like the ledger on the tomb. So the gravestone in layman speak is the name is all capital. So when we was talking, Kevin and I, about the coroner possibly being able to, as the chief solicitor, was we say, in legal man for the
County,
being able to identify as flesh, blood, living, because if you look at the interpretations of the language used in the Deaths and Births, Deaths, Marriages Act, birth includes stillbirth in the interpretation of the word birth. So a birth certificate includes stillbirth, and with the inclusio est ulterius shenanigans that goes off. Yeah, then therefore if it includes one, it excludes the other. So a birth certificate, if it includes the definition of stillbirth in that interpretation of birth, means that it is in fact a kind of a death certificate. We look at persons, and the video I've done on persons recently is like a 2-part, 3 hours long apart on this channel. I go into it and evidence for you all that don't know about persons and corporations and companies and persona and more Latin language. You've got the ministerial code operating with the ministers with over here. So we have a merger of the church and the state with the chattel. and the acquisitions of the Commonwealth and the state and the language. So you've got mixed jurisdictions constantly at play. So if it didn't matter what style the language was used for the name, then it would all be lowercase and it would all be in Oxford English. But you've got legalese, you've got Latin, you've got English, you know, you've got UCC, you've got canon law, you've got maritime admiralty, you've got lex mercatoria and commerce underpinning. You see, it gets into a little bit of a sticky situation with the research and rabbit holes that we've all been down. You know, we recognise that we have an agent that can be used in commerce. For us to commercially intercourse commercially, we have to use our agent, which is our person, because man is not going to be able to exist in this ungodly realm of which they've set up, and for reasons of gain of property and capital gains, and to I don't know, the devil is in the details, and we have indeed found Beelzebub himself within these rabbit holes and the inner workings of the commercial legal structure and languages and styles and loss of capacity and taking the Father's name in vain. It's a mixture of, you know, and there is a pathway out of that with regards to reclaiming or claiming the original future security interest, which will have been arguably the certificate of live birth is the foundation identity document that all of this is pinned upon. And then it goes forward through from the foundation identity document, which would be the certificate of live birth, up to the birth certificate, up to us becoming at the age of majority and taking that you know, person and becoming the person, and then waking up and going down this discovery to find that we in fact have a person, and that we can be a person if we deem it, or we can be a name if we deem it a benefit to us, but it isn't always a benefit to us. And it goes against our religious, political, social and cultural beliefs now after the information that we've learned. So you hold them to account with various and many areas of, but using their own acts, statutes, legislation and rules and policy, and pointing out law and crimes that have been committed by using rules and policy to break law. And then we have to separate the areas of law and look at the tirages of the law, the authority, the jurisdiction, and we have to regain the Christ-like consciousness. And the Christ-like consciousness isn't about being like Jesus and teaching Christianity. It's about knowing thyself and becoming mystically and spiritually, in the words of Steiner and Watts and Goddard and people, Blavatsky, Hall, Crowley, Lovecraft, and getting into all of these areas of the dark side of the magic areas that they use to monopolize us in this game of monopoly, the game of life, which is you know, it's not just about saying law doesn't apply to us sovereigns, not at all. It's about exposing the conspiracy and the conspiring that has happened by these institutions, families, bloodlines, and the papacy across the ages for their own gain and benefit, dealing with the devil. Going back to the Christ-like consciousness is actually to, as in an Aristotelian type way of knowing thyself.
I just see Lisa's, excuse me, put message in. Breaking news: Bill Gates' malaria vaccine has been approved by the WHO. It's 30% effective. One of the side effects is meningitis. You can't make this shit up, she says. You're absolutely right. These are your agendas coming into play. We all know the Georgia Guidestones. This is how the numbers are coming down.
Yeah, let's have a look at the chat room and see what's going on in there. Let's see what's happening.
Bernie, hello mate. Jerry, Is that DK research? DKL? I can't see. I haven't got my glasses on. Winging it. Everybody's all right. All of you joined in now. Jerry, nice to see. Nice to see all of you. Been a while, Jerry. Been away for a while.
Yes, the Chicago Book of Styles.
Yeah.
Indeed, we've got the various other publications there as well. The Oxford Styles Manual to go with that. Yes, the Treasury is key in all of this. They are the go-between between the HMRC, Revenue and Collections, Her Majesty's Revenue and Collections, that possibly more than likely is nothing to do with Her Majesty. The Treasury is the office, the Chief Financial Officer for your family estate that can be looked at with regards to security interests, security instruments that we're talking about in this chat. Lisa saw a dog present people.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, yeah, with people presenting paper money to a cookie shop. He brings a leaf each day to buy a cookie. Oh, that is excellent. So
Yeah, I saw that story. Yeah.
the shop takes his payment. I'll drop you.
Yeah.
Equal exchange, the laws of exchange, equal alchemy, the laws of equal exchange. There is an equal and fair exchange that needs to be done. We talk about value and money and payment in kind. You pay attention, you get knowledge. Knowledge used correctly turns into a form of wisdom, so to speak. So the dog has I know nothing about that story, but I'm just skimming the room there, Kevin, the chat.
Yeah, I did see that earlier, but a couple of weeks back, I think I saw article about that. Something I was watching, probably about amazing animals and shit like that, on the topic like that.
Section 22, Bills of Exchange. You're acting as an agent for the minor and you can appoint a trustee to discharge the debt. Speaking of equal exchange. Fair exchange, yes, Stephen. Bless up for that. If you have a driver's license, you're an employee of the corporation of DVLA or UK.gov. Well, possibly, but did you knowingly enter into the terms and conditions? Was the consideration, for an agreement to be valid? There are, I believe, 7 points. So you could argue that on the prima facie evidence of it, yes. But when we get down to the nitty gritty, clean hands, and we look at trusts, we look at the state of affairs, and we look at implied resulting constructive trusts, unconscionability, then that's an unconscionable act that is done, and it doesn't stand. You can rescind, revoke, and correct misconstrued relationships. So on one hand, yes. But on the other hand, in the real world, where men are men, then no.
As the statutes and acts only apply to members, people performing a function of government and members of the government. When in the scenario with a driving license and being stopped and being asked for it, you're actually presenting government ID. So effectively, already you're just proving that you are doing that.
Yeah.
No, well, you are presenting your driver. So are you the driver of this vehicle is the question. And the answer given is no, I am not the driver. I am David the traveller, and I have a driver present with me. I will present my driver to you. Yes, and as I touched upon earlier, and then as I've
Which
just then no knowledge, no first-hand knowledge was given, no honourability and unconscionable and constructed trust agreement formed. Therefore, I have been previously known to be a driver, but now first-hand knowledge has come to light. It needs correcting the relationships here. I have a driver for commercial purposes. Should I ever be wanting to work in a commercial capacity, other than that, I don't need a driver. You don't need. None of us really need a driver's license. We need to be sure that we are capable of propelling, a pleasure craft safely and reliably. That's standard. Yeah, it used to be granddad licenses come to mind, where your granddad would show you how to travel and operate the Iron Horse and pleasure craft, and licensing in itself, license, the word, the build of the writing, the letters used in the word. So no, not when you get down to it. I've done some extensive work with Notice and GDPR and Julie Leonard and the DVLA. I haven't approached Grand Chaps yet, but we would need to be looking to amend these construed relationships and get the correct titles and rights sorted out, so we can get full disclosure. It's called full disclosure is what we would require now. We haven't had full disclosure, none of us.
no, right. I think so if we can just go back to what John was saying in the scenario of being pulled over, right? So you've basically gone, they've said, produce your license. You've clarified, given some terms and conditions in order to do that. So you've separated yourself already. I see what John's saying. So he's just going about it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
If you see what I mean.
Well, it's laying down the terms and conditions of the contract, because
you want to see my driver's details. Well, first let's establish this, and then I'll present my my person to you.
I mean, this is all academic at this point. I've no idea whether that'll work, but for me, the jigsaw pieces just dropped in and a light went on in my head, and I thought that's it. Now, and I hope I'm not wrong, because if I'm right, that is the solution. Present the terms and conditions and stick to your terms and conditions of the contract, and they're in the contract, because just the very fact that they are proceeding with their business is a clear illustration that they've accepted your terms. Even if they say, no, well, I'm not accepting your terms and you're coming with me, mate, and takes you, that's not negotiable. You've presented the terms and conditions for being in service of Her Majesty's offices, and now you're in service because you're being operated by one as your person. So, I mean, to me, it really does make perfect sense. But the proof of the pudding's in the eating, I suppose.
Yeah, well, don't go out of your way to prove it. Let them come to you. Don't entice.
Well, as I said to you earlier, there's already an arrest warrant out for me in Scotland, but for some reason the English police aren't interested in it, which is just bizarre. I've never heard of that scenario before.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not that. I don't know. That jurisdiction depends what it's for, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's for some misdemeanor driving, careless driving, I think. Well, I've paid very little interest in it, but they've already had a court case and they've issued a warrant basically because I didn't go to court. But when I contacted the police in England and said, "What's this? Why were you looking for me?" That's what they said. Well, we came to serve papers on you from the Scottish office, and you weren't there, so we couldn't. But now we're not interested. But there is a warrant out for you. So it's interesting.
Well, then, just don't go to Scotland, mate.
The problem is they only live 4 miles away from Scotland.
I've got something that I wrote some time ago, and I did it with a man commonly known as David of Surrey when he was an admin in one of our previous Facebook groups some years ago. It's probably going on for 5 to 7 years old, but it reads, if I read a paragraph or two from this and give you an idea of the area that we was at 7 years ago, and then bear in mind that we've built heavily on this, and this has been revised, and certain other instruments have been created for communicating at higher levels of government. But it reads, authentic sovereign man David, holder in the course of the Jeremita Trust estate, an interested third party for David Jeremita Trust, co-public trust, present this affirmation as a proclamation and affidavit of truth as evidence of the facts for and on the record, lex non scripta. I do solemnly swear that the facts contained herein are true, correct and certain. I retain all unalienable rights and waive all privileges. My flesh and blood vessel, and I've put natural person in brackets because there is man, there is your legal crown copyright public person, and then there's at law your natural person. When we look at in sui juris pro pria persona and pro se, and we look at persons and types of persons, then natural person is an interesting one to have put before you. My flesh and blood vessel, meaning natural person, aka man, is not bonded for the corporate legal arena. The law of statutes is the law of contract, and we as human beings have the right to decline to contract. Statutes do not apply. A statute is a legislative rule of society giving the force of law by the consent of the governed. I've already given you earlier in this chat the Halsbury references to that. I do not give my consent, tacit or otherwise. And then I've put Exodus in brackets because Exodus, the law of contract, is referenced in the biblical precepts that are with the 10 commercial maxims of London Templar law. The codes there are next to it. We are all equal in law, however, knowledge separates the governed from the masters. If we are all equal, do we not have the status of sovereigns and diplomats if we so choose? I will not allow a plea in my absence. Anyone entering a plea without my written permission will be considered the defendant and responsible for all costs. This document does not form part of a negotiable instrument. We cannot give to anyone or anything any power or authority we do not have. And then I've put in brackets sovereignty, QE2 coronation. We the people gave the sovereignty to the Queen at her coronation. I use we the people loosely, but one cannot give something that one does not already possess. So if the Queen was handed over sovereignty from the people, on the prima facie evidence of it, that is explainable in itself. My law is the Bible. If righteousness is made profitable, then corruption will prevail. Ex dolo malo non oritor actio. I, David of the family Jeremita, a living, breathing, authentic being, acting under protest, previously duress, protest of circumstances at this time as an authorised third party representative, co-beneficiary and chief executor for the legal person, do solemnly swear, declare and depose that the entire compilation of documents, statements and evidence herein are both true and factual to my lawful understanding and to the best of my present day knowledge and first-hand experiences. I swear by Almighty God and under my full liability and penalty of perjury that I am competent to state the matters set forth herein, and I have first-hand knowledge of the facts stated herein, that all the facts stated herein are true, correct, certain, admissible as evidence, and if called upon as witness, I will testify to the veracity that the eternal unchanged principles of commercial law are, and then I've written all of the 10 commercial maxims: a workman is worthy of his hire, all are equal under the law, in law truth is sovereign, truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit, an unrebutted affidavit stands as truth at law, an unrebutted affidavit becomes the judgment in law, all matters must be expressed to be resolved. He who leaves the battlefield first loses by default, sacrifices the measure of credibility. A claim can be satisfied only through an affidavit, point to point rebuttal, resolution by jury or payment. That commercial processes, including this affidavit and the required responses with it, are non-judicial and prejudicial, because no judge, court, government or any agencies thereof or any third parties whatsoever can abrogate anyone's affidavit of truth. Only a party affected by an affidavit can speak and act for himself, and is solely responsible for responding with his own affidavit of truth that no one else can do for him. That the lawful seizure, collection and transfer of ownership of money or property must be effected by means of valid commercial lien. That I am not the creation or chattel property of any person or government agency whatsoever. I am not under any government agency, state, federal, i.e. union, or any other self-passed laws, statute, regulations or policies. That any and all of the various papers, documents, edition, boilerplate contracts or agreements I may have signed with any government agency or entity or others that might be construed to indicate a conclusion contrary to my herein below assertions were made, signed under duress of circumstance amidst very serious abuse of processes, not only by the police but by Crown Prosecution Services and UK Administrative Directorate, ministers, court staff. There is a very serious lack of full disclosure, creating a deliberate lack of full knowledge, a deliberate action of fraud, and I've put 2006 Fraud Act Section 3, non-disclosure, concealment of material fact and misrepresentation. So I draw you back to what we said about driving licenses, non-disclosure and no disclosure at all there, misrepresentation. Such action thereby creates stressful situation of protest, duress and intimidation, violating all documents by such action of fraud. And I've gone down, it's pages and pages long, about pleas and the actual petition of the barons. This was back in the day where it was brought to us that the Daily Telegraph on the 24th of March 2001 brought out about the petition. I'll leave that there because we've got stronger things to rely upon than barons and Magna Carta, but it was true and relevant at the time, and the fact is a fact. So the fact that the whole community of the realm is obliged to support the Barons Committee means that individual officials have no authority to issue demands in the name of the Crown and commit the statutory offence of fraud by misrepresentation. The courts have no authority to deny the subjects' rights. Representatives of the Crown may not breach the common law maxim that no man may sit in judgment of his own cause. It is for the Barons Committee to let us know when they are satisfied that redress has been obtained. So again, I tell you, it's years old, but I was on the right line. We was on the right lines, and we've since improved and strengthened our argumentation with equity and trust and the civil procedure rules, the pre-action protocols, and what we've talked about in the duration of this chat. Section 2 of the 1868 Oath Act deems it perjury to administer an oath contrary to common law. Then we've got the Halsbury's 14th edition, Acts and Statutes, legislative rule of society, given the force of law by the consent of the governed. We've got about magistrates being administrative courts. I've even got Franco Collins canons, positive law, which aren't really, again, we've come a long way since then, but at the time when we saw those and we heard what Frank was saying, 2054, 2055, 2056, 57. And then to close down, attention legal department to who it may concern, please note, and I've put legal fiction in red, the living am fully aware that any all claims made concerning a Crown Corporation owned name is in fact an admission and administration of fraud where false impersonation is concerned and is a capital crime, inasmuch as you, the sender, have mailed something under assumption presumption of law that I, the living, am somehow related to the Crown copyright registered name at birth is in fact aiding and abetting another into fraud. We've since found personage and barratry to couple with that. Should I accept any all things items mailed are in fact contracts, inasmuch as acceptance is assumed presumed due to a Vatican City State Postal Code open mailbox access involved and attached to the Crown owned name that is not me, my property where it is, intent to commit enticement to slavery. And what you talked about earlier is still ringing true today. We've got the same vein of thought, very much so in some respects, on you, the sender's part, of intent to commit fraud or joinder as such, and for which you are fully liable. You, the sender, are in fact acting in fraud by virtue of name, title, office. You know, you put insert the person there, the officer. You are impersonating and are engaging in a deliberate attempt to aid and abet fraud with unclean hands. So that was at the beginning parts of equity and finding out about unrich adjustment, unconscionable behaviour, actions, misconstrued relationships, constructive, resulting and implied trusts, where acting in good faith is instantly removed henceforth hereto, and are criminally liable and guilty of for the intent to do so knowingly or even unknowingly, because ignorance of the law, as they say, is no defence. Further continuance of your attempts to procure joinder via deceptive measures knowingly, unknowingly, render proof of intent to so, whereas the rightful owner of any or legal names, namely the Crown Corporation, City of London State Temple Bar, owns any and all liability for all registered corporations, legal persons. And then we was heavily reliant on treason and barons back in the day, but as I say, I'm happy to say we've all come a lot further, and we know that the barons aren't there to help us. That's the Magna Carta and the agreement and the failure of that, and the papal bull annulling Magna Carta, and the subsequent acquisitions that have happened between the monarchy, the crown, the state, the crown of the papacy. The barons themselves aren't going to do diddly squat to help anybody out, because we wasn't involved in that agreement, and I don't believe that's the strongest argumentation point for restoring title rights to property and expressing who you are and holding to account, as we've discussed over the years. But it's to do with property and a wrongful arrest, no crimes being committed, lawful standings, unlawful imprisonment, touching on Attorney General's office, to get in touch with them, serve them correct paperwork, the occupier in office and who we are as with regards to our estates, fraudulent contracts and perjury, numerous judges, administrative courts. But yeah, that's a very old, post there, and I've seen something from Stephen recently in a Telegram chat where they've started to mention a lady in his group has done a notice to a council return to sender, and it contains Postal Services Act 2000, and it's got the Act to establish Postal Services Commission and the Consumer Council for Postal Services to provide for the licensings of certain postal services for a universal postal service to provide, and they've written to the private capacity of the chief executive of a council, given the Duns number of a Southampton council, written in with canon law, physical woman, lady from Southampton has written this and used canon law to demonstrate the physical woman is there. The lawful beneficiary, name Emma, gives non-acceptance as acceptor under section 92 computation of time, so that's bills of exchange 1882 reference, and a notice of dishonour, section 43 of the Bills of Exchange Act 1882, as no legal or lawful name is on the article. Fraud is being committed in the private capacity of the name of the Chief Executive of Southampton Council. Fraud Act 2006, section 8A, fraudulent article. The mail is franked, therefore fraudulent under the Universal Postal Union Convention, section 9, for monetary gain. I am returning the 2 letters that have been sent fraudulently, as I will not interfere with the mail that is not in my lawful or even legal name, as this would be committing an offence under the Postal Act 2000, section 84, interfering with the mail. 3A. 3. A person commits an offence if intending to act to a person's detriment and without reasonable excuse they open a postal packet which they know or reasonably suspect have been incorrectly delivered to them. We are not accepting this bill under the Bills of Exchange Act 82, section 43, dishonour by non-acceptance and its consequences, and subsequently no presentment for payment is necessary under section 43, chapter part 2, Bills of Exchange Act 82, in honour. Notice witnessed under Bills of Exchange Act 82, section 94, as protest, as notaries, and then autographs witnessed, and canon law deed pollex, sign of nature. Oh, so we have come very, very far, as you can see, with the complexity, and you'd argue with there's mixed jurisdictions there, David, but it's just an effort by somebody to say, get fucked, that's not right, I'm not having it, suck on that. Hey?
There is one thing I want to say there, David. When you started that in the first part of what you were speaking there, you said we reserve the right not to contract. Just curious where that came from, because effectively, if you've got the right not to contract, then by default you've also got the right to contract, which brings you back to the thing I was saying earlier.
Indeed, yes. It depends what capacity, you see, because previously we was all persons, and we believed we was a name and a national insurance number, a date of birth, a surname, and all of these unique identifiers for our persons. So now we've learned to be no respecter of persons, and to implement our agent, which is doing business as the all caps, and we recognise we have ourselves the principal source of the credit. You see, Winston Shrout made a big mistake with his issues, and I believe one of the reasons he was locked up after his alleged court appearance and his allegedly being locked up was because he put Man down as the creditor for his kind of secured party creditor 1099 HJR 192 style of management for estate administration. There is a bit more to it than that, whereas the foundation identity document or the future security interest will actually be this fundamental principal foundation source of credit where all of this game originates from. So Man would never be the creditor in so much of a respect. It's about claiming the securities and the security interest that was abandoned by Mum and put into the public trust at the point of registration. So it's a little bit more complex, as again it's continuous improvement and learning and being humble and saying we dropped a bollock there, we got that wrong, they got that wrong. We're learning as an international intellectual freedom movement sovereign community here, and we're working with against the dark arts. The light is working against the dark, and we have now the capacity, the means, the ways, and the argumentation, the honourability, the clean hands to negotiate and navigate these misconstrued relationships. And when people do find the remedy, they want to sell it for tens of thousands of pounds, the remedy, the administrative remedy. So when you look at the duties and obligations as the trustee and co-beneficiary of the public trust, you have common law duties and obligations, you have assumptions and presumptions upon you, and part of a correct administration of the public trust that was formed, you've got the creation of the 3 crowns to bear in mind, from Pope Boniface 1302 all the way up to present day, alongside the public trust that has been created at the point of registration in all of this topic, content and jurisdiction that we're talking about right now. So we do have the rights. You've got retained fundamental rights that, as you said earlier, those that do not assert their rights at law are deemed to have none. So if no one's going to tell you what your rights are, an attorney, a brief, the government, schools, any education, the church, none of them are going to tell you what your rights are, and you don't know what your rights are, then you're duly obligated and are going to contract. And we have done that down the line in the past through the annals of history, whilst this movement has been continuously improving and evolving. But now we do not have to be forced to be compelled to perform under contracts which are not known to us and not disclosed to us. And we've we've got the right terminology, the language, and we are looking at communicating with higher levels of government offices and ministers and generals to make that actually come to fruition. And if it's ignored, we're learning to legally, lawfully, internationally and biblically, Mosaic and Abrahamic way, there's like 5 different maybe 6 different jurisdictions simultaneously being countered at this moment for us not to be able to be forced to perform under assumption and presumption to contract, as has been, or summary judgments and ignorance of, tacitly acquiescence. What we're getting to a stage of now is that we are meeting them at the correct level, we are raising it to higher levels of law, we are following the pre-action protocols, we are keeping clean hands, we are being in dishonour, we are getting the claimants in dishonour, and we are conditionally accepting, we are stopping all fines, fees, levies and forfeitures from being applied, we are moving the chessboard in such a way that we're getting checkmate. The then period comes of ignorance, of tacit acquiescence, of tacit procurement, and then all things go quiet and people get left alone. But that then people are like celebrating and saying we've done it, or you're having you and others are having a motion to discontinue the proceedings. Well, that's great, but I'm sorry, performance has been had, damages have been done, heartache, stress, damages, remedy needs to be now sought after. So amongst others, the courts, the higher courts, the royal courts of justice, judicial reviews, and at home and away from home, there are jurisdictions at play that we can call upon and use, as well as the representative for the papacy crown in the form of archbishops as well to notice, which is how the ministers are governed themselves. So we're looking and we are seeing and we are able to play the game, play it correctly, counter them and hold them to account. And in some instances, people are happy just to be left alone, to fight the battle and to not win the war, but to win several battles and to be in a position better than they was just before, they'd entered into the battles and defended and asserted and retained their rights and held the legal system to account. But it's getting to the point where we are looking for our equitable relief now within this system. We've got a greater understanding, more patience, more resources, more wins under our belt. To be fair, we've obtained between us all a higher amount of knowledge. We've developed spiritually, we've developed intellectually, we've developed, it may not seem like it right now as of April 2022, but we are, and it is just around the corner, what we are all seeking, to be left alone and to exist in the private, to manage our estates privately and to appoint the correct officers, generals, ministers, secretaries in government and around the realm for our service to us, because we're not part of the United Kingdom Corporation, we're not part of the London Law Society, most of us aren't even part of a church, a formal recognised religious church that's bona fide is what I mean. We're part of our own church and our own society, and we have got connection with our higher self and the cosmic consciousness. That in itself is a church, where we're at our temples, but we are learning to take a hit and then not see that as a defeat, even though it is a minor, it's a loss, and we're moving forward with playing them at their own game. I keep looking at these books here and the legal areas, but the Bibles and the legal areas, the equity and the trust, the propositions of equity, trust law in itself, the civil procedure rules. You know, we've come a long way, and we can get the situation under control. We can stop it, we can question it, we can look for validation, and then we can look for motions of discharging, or you're getting and others are getting situations where it's becoming apparent that you've caught them out and they're happy to run away or leave the battlefield. But a majority are happy to be, it isn't settled, and it isn't, the charges aren't discharged, and the equitable relief has not been given, no remedy and satisfaction has been sought, and it may rear its ugly head later down the line. So those of us that are so inclined are persevering on as we do to get closure, to get settlement, to get remedy, and to be recognised, as Anders said earlier. You know, we are collecting, we are magnetising others that see now, especially after the last 2 years of the world stage and its performances there, and the presidential elections, and certain types speaking out, and you know, great leaders coming out speaking, looking at history, reanalyzing history, and looking at what we've looked at through the content of our time together, what we've talked about on this video chat. The evidence is irrefutable, you know, and it's just about persevering on, and you shall seek and ye shall find. Yeah.
Can I just throw another swerve ball in there again, David? You were just saying there about to find, basically to hold them accountable. Well, the damages that you suffer, the injury that you suffer when you're going through their system, whether it be just the trauma of having to go to court, or getting locked up in a police cell, or getting locked up in a jail or whatever, unlawfully, the only remedy that you've got there is equity. And you can't go to a court of equity because you volunteered in the first place, because equity doesn't aid a volunteer. And which brings you back round to the point I was making. I mean, it all, to me, it just sort of seems like it's on, that seems to be on point.
Let me get this out. Yeah, I can't see it, but yeah and no, you can, because the propositions of equity are equity. Here's one where the rules of common law and those of equity collide. Equity will prevail. Yes, yeah, equity will not allow a statute to commit a fraud. So you say that, but first in time is first in line. And I will try to find from this little thing here, publication, about volunteers, and I will get that nailed down, because you think that, but it isn't how you think. It's the absence of intention plays a big part there. You didn't intend, you know, there are certain rules to the game, and you can, just by expressing the correct relationships, dissolve the constructed or implied trust that you're in, and come back to the top again. There are it's a bit like cheat codes for computer games. You know, equity is equality, you know, and things like this. And if equality hasn't been applied, and we're all equal under at law, then you know, there are higher. You have to be able to. You're not going to win the war in one battle, and your paperwork will precede you. So when will equity assist a volunteer? This might be what I'm looking for. A completely constituted trust is enforceable by all beneficiaries, whether or not they have given consideration. An incompletely constructed trust can be enforced only by those beneficiaries who have given consideration. The imperfect transfer is then treated as a contract to transfer, which may be specifically enforced. The principle that equity will not assist a volunteer may, however, be sidestepped in a number of ways. In Curtis versus Pulbrook 2011, Briggs J. expressed some dissatisfaction with the present rules and doubted that the circumstances when equity will and will not perfect an apparently imperfect gift serve any clearly identifiable or rational policy objective. These exceptions are the so-called every effort rule, re Rose 1952, when it would be unconscionable for the donor to change his mind, as promoted by Arden L.J. in the Pennington versus Wayne 2002. Donatio mortis causa, the rules which relate to deathbed gifts. In cases of fortuitous vesting, Strong versus Bird, re Raleigh's Will Trust, proprietary estoppel. And it does go on. There are further things when will equity assist a volunteer, but it does have an extensive breakdown about the exceptions and what that is. And that was just me finding. I'm just scratching through. I've got 5 books with thousands of pages to look at, and there is more on that. But
Which book is it, David?
this is a secret book. I'll tell you offline.
Okay.
One of my weapons. Not secret, but it's this word.
Oh, that's absolutely fabulous. Thanks.
There's people out there that just come and they're magpies of magic and thieves of tradition, and the work that we've had to do and I've had to do independently and what we've all done, is a credit to us all. So I don't just give things out that on tube now like I used to. I want you to come and help us and to back us up, and that's not at you, John. That's everybody.
No, fair enough. Well, actually, in the analogy that I've been giving you about the research I've done and what I've come up with, I haven't actually presented the salient points to support the argument for exactly the reason you've just spoken about.
Yeah. With all the love we've got, love and respect and that for everybody, and I used to, known for wearing my heart on my sleeve, and there's other content creators, channels and groups out there that even take the information and then they go and sell it as well, and I don't want to help them fleece the rest of the family. If you are coming to support us in the private, then you will get all of this information, and it's there and available. So for those that are honourable, but other than that, I'm sorry. Yeah. The rules of the game have changed because our kindness was mistaken for weakness, and that's not on.
As it often is.
That's not on. Yeah. Here we go. The last bit to close down. I know this subject matter now, and I know my publications quite well. Equity will not assist a volunteer. Equity will not grant specific performance of a gratuitous promise, i.e. an agreement that is not supported by consideration. In relation to trusts, this means that equity will assist a beneficiary only when there is a perfectly constructed trust, i.e. once legal title to the trust property has vested in the trustee. See Milroy versus Lord 1862. This is considered further in chapter 4, and then it goes on to reference equity looks on that as done, that ought to be done, and there's loads of case law references here. So this is to do with the propositions of equity. Equity will not permit a statute to be used as an engine of fraud. Equity acts in personam. That means that it's designed to prevent a specific individual from acting unconscionably. There needs to be a person present for equity to be applied. Equity imputes an intention to fulfill an obligation. Equity will not perfect an imperfect gift. Are areas that follow on from that volunteer section there. So when I said earlier it does go deeper, and it's not just about simply volunteering, that's exactly partly applied correctly what you said, but it does go a little bit deeper into actual trust law and the governance of equity within trust law to make sure all is fair.
So does that mean that you would really have to actually have your own trust active before you can gain equity?
No, because When we talk about trust and trust law, we recognise that there is at play public trust, co-public trust, where we can be considered the co-public trustee and the co-beneficiary of the public trust. There are ministers in office that are operating with trust. There is the since 1300s and Pope Boniface and the creation of the Crown Attorney Regis. Convocation, unam sanctum, and declaration. There are trusts. There is the very first testamentary trust, legal Roman. When I say that, loosely termed, but in reference to this subject matter, it is correct. The very first testamentary trust that was evidenced in the history of the Roman secular legal laws that we know of was Pope Boniface 1302 and unum sanctum. Subsequently from them and the other popes and creations of the crown was Eterni Regis. You see, then you've got convocation, a collection of souls and property. There are trusts at play that are in the public domain with the monarchy, the crown of the papacy, and the governments and the monarchs and things around the world. That goes all the way from England to Arabs and to the Crown Prince of Saudi and things like this that are at play. Then you've got private trusts and different layers of trusts that operate trusts as legal entities, for instance, trusts owning properties. There is like the courts, there is tierages of trusts at play. There isn't just a trust, as you've come to learn. There are layers. There are jurisdictions of trust, and they're all some of them, like in a court-based scenario, you can argue that there's a Seta K and a Seta KV trust possibly at play there, and there's trusts within the government at play, as well as the papacy and the canons and the Vatican trusts at play. But then you might have a last will and testament or discretionary trusts or private trusts at play that have protected your property. So there are trusts within trusts, and it's about the separation of that. So yes, man can have private express trusts and different types of trusts, and property can be held by that trust. Trusts can own property and so forth and so on. But then there are other trusts at play, which is a judge, a fiduciary capacity. A judge has got a fiduciary capacity. A fiduciary has got what? Duties to the beneficiary. So you see what I mean? You've got to separate them out and know. It's a bit of a mind fuck, to be fair, but you did ask, and that's what's happening. So you see, the public trust, public trust, and private trusts.
Yeah.
Bumshanker. I got to get out of a warehouse. And I would love to do this full time and to get Kevin, the admins, Stephen, a few others that want to step up, yourself. You know what I mean? If we had the money and the resources, I'd like to offer to write free wills for people, and hopefully in that somebody might donate some of their estate to the use of our private trust to allow us to obtain resources instead of estates, money, promises, whatever, assets going to cats and dogs home. We'll look after the cats and dogs, and we'll look after mankind and communities as well. I'd like to, at one stage, before I get too old, I would like to do this full time, full bore, warp speed with Kevin, Albert, Claire, Gansders, whoever else wants to step up. If we only had the resources and I could put some proper hardcore, effort into this, I think it'd do us good. And I promise to, if donations come and people was to entrust us with that, it would be used as it is said. I wouldn't be disappearing, buying Ferraris, smoking ganja and dancing with bare naked ladies. No, because I give you my word and my promise. So when
not even on your day off. Not even on your day off.
Oh,
don't lie.
Let's look at the room. Gansders. It's just
Yeah.
pop back. All right.
I'm here. Oh, take me away, please.
Public office isn't public trust. It is. Came on 8:30. Long time no see. Indeed, there's many layers to it operating simultaneously. Jerry says John's a good man. Stephen's gone to bed. Entities have no soul.
Lisa's had to leave as well. To say granddaughter's 7th trip around the sun. Fair play. Don't you hurt yourself at Jumping Junction, Lisa. We know what you like.
Oh, I
Have a
have
lovely
to
time.
say to Lisa too that I still love her. I haven't been able to see her on the chat. Sorry.
Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to have to duck out anyway because I've got some admin to do. So it really thanks for welcoming me into the Zoom, and I'll speak to you again soon, guys.
Good to see you, John. Thanks for popping in, mate. And I'll speak to you later on in the week for sure.
Okay.
And we'll get something organised. All right. So you can do go a little bit, cover more of the stuff you and I spoke about earlier with Dave and I.
Yeah, all I did there was skip over the surface and sort of.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, you know, there's much more, like you were saying to me earlier on today, that I think Dave would certainly appreciate listening to. So we'll get that organised, mate. All right.
Well, have a great night, guys. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Much love, John. Cheers, mate.
Bye, John.
Bless.
Bye.
Right. Oh, getting old.
Yeah, me too. This is the thing. Time is short. 43, approaching 50 in 7 years. I want to get this locked off and knuckled down as soon as possible. We are on the cusp of great things.
Spring chicken.
That virus that I had the other week, I did take a test, and our kid made me do some testing. I'm not adverse to doing the odd test, to be fair, just to keep the family appeased. Negative for COVID virus, but I had headache right behind the eyes and the temples. I had back throbbing, lower back pain. I had testicular throbbing, sweats, shakes, shivers, and I really felt my age. I don't mind telling you. I went still into the workplace of servitude because they sanction for absences. Even though, with all that said, I shouldn't have gone in. I should have stayed at home. But I thought I'm not ill enough to stay at home. Even though I was quite ill, I thought I'm just going to go in, and because they're going to sanction people for having time off, and I'd got negative for COVID, even though it probably was a false negative, or who knows what the test, if they're even right for what they are. I just went in and I infected half the workforce. I'm happy to say they hate me, but I caught it from one of them in the first instance. You know, I didn't create it myself. I got it from the workplace, and it really knocked me out. It was the worst I've felt in quite some time.
Well, I'm glad you're over it, mate.
Yeah,
Just a nasty flu.
that's right.
That's all it is.
The law of tort. Yes, that is a torturous subject in itself. It's one of the darkest, most, we can't talk about it now, came on, but I'm fully aware of torts of battery and torts and executor disun tort, was it? What's it on about?
Yeah.
All of that. It's the tort law is the darker area of it, and torture. It's not pleasant. It's not big, it's not clever, but yeah, torts. Beneficiaries shall not suffer torts. Man shall not suffer torts. Valid point.
Hello to Bobby. Give us all a shout there.
What's happening with Rishi and his lady? All this
Oh,
Go on, Kevin. Have you heard about this? Isn't it brilliant?
oh, come on. Right, hang on. What is going on? Let's have just a very basic look. She's willing to pay, all of a sudden, now they've been caught, millions in tax to keep her up, to keep that twat in an 150 grand job. Don't get it.
I just
Don't get it.
mentioning that.
Oh, we know they're fucking filthy. Excuse my French, cunts. It's disgusting. These people don't give a shit, and it doesn't matter. If the other lot were in, it'd be exactly the same. They'd be milking the cow too. It's all so corrupt. It's just beyond the joke now. It really is. It's dragging them out in the streets time, mate, as far as I'm concerned.
I've heard a little bit on the news about Indian citizenship and everything's above board and monies have been paid that should be paid and tax, treasury, UK. I thought this is just uncanny that it's coming from the Mr. Rishi of the Sunak and the Lord Chancellor, the Exchequer, and the positioning that they're having a field day with him now. And I just heard today that she's agreed to pay, and I thought, well, why would you? If the law is the law and everybody's prim and proper, then there's no need to volunteer to pay millions in taxes. But it just made me, the reason I mention that is just to bring it up and to air the dirty linen, because it's what we need to do. But it made me think of the Queen, and I believe the Queen and the royal family volunteered to pay income taxes around about 2000.
Well, the Queen did.
Yeah, she wasn't subject to, as you can imagine, for various reasons, laterally thinking ones of you, but she volunteered to start paying taxes in about 2009, I believe, when it was brought up. So over to you, yeah, crack on.
Yeah, just to say it's ridiculous. I think what's happened is she clearly is living here. Now it's all come to light. That's why she's offered it up. Because as you say, if tax avoidance isn't illegal, is it? You can use the law like that. So why all of a sudden they're going to pay, sling all this money in, and it's filthy, all of it, absolutely filthy. They should all be hung. A lot of them. And there he is putting taxes up here and there and everywhere on the normal person, and they're totally taking the piss in the background. I mean, it's beyond belief. It really is. Not surprising.
Tax avoidance in its forms, yeah. It's like the channels, Google, Indiglo, have a little chat about they now want channels that have monetarised their channels to look at paying taxes, and do you have to pay, are you subject to pay taxes? And I ended up thinking about Google and YouTube and registration in Ireland and tax avoidance schemes that they have, and all these biggest companies. There's a few I can mention that I won't. One was a coffee chain, one was an internet marketing delivery service, named after a jungle. They've all got their head offices and places situated around the realm, foreign offshore tax havens and people that were registered places, and to try to avoid, and then it's like YouTube, Google, tax avoidances that have happened, are happening, failure to pay to the Treasury and United Kingdom Corporation for legal loopholes, but yet channel owners making a pittance have got to justify whether or not they're due to pay their taxes on monetarised channels. I'm like, you couldn't make it up, you really couldn't. No. It's just marvellous.
They're coining it in everywhere, aren't they?
P&O, that one, that was kicking the nuts again for the working man, wasn't it? It just shows you the brass neck of them.
Yeah, and even what they said at the inquiry thing, well, the CEO, was it, or one of them said, yeah, we knew we were meant to go through the unions, but we just didn't bother. We thought we'd sort it all out later. And the guy said to him, so you chose to break the law? He went, yeah. Yeah, I don't care. And what was it, 100 million a year So, and they reckon they've been losing. I mean, how long do you let that sort of money being lost carry on? That's ridiculous. Oh yeah, it's not like, oh yeah, last year we lost 100 million. No, for the last 10. What the hell? Oh, hang on. Oh.
Yeah, it's amazing. The world, the news, the stories.
Yeah, guys, it's getting late here too, so I'm signing off. But I thank you all for tonight. You
Thank you, Anders. Good to see
Yeah,
you.
nice to see you, Anders, mate. Keep well. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah.
Big love, brother.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah, we'll look at wrapping up in a minute. I'm in the office
Oh yeah,
6 a.m. till 6 p.m. So we'll say
back at it.
thank you, Tube. We'll be back soon. I've enjoyed this. It's been very entertaining.
Yeah, I think we was up to about 35 at one point. Thanks everybody for joining us. I know it's been a while. We apologise for that. Life's getting in the way of planning. It's all David's fault for going to work. No, we don't have the time that we did have, and you know, some of the time at the moment is obviously in the middle of the week and stuff. So it's just been awkward and busy and all sorts. But no, great to see you all. Really appreciate everybody that popped in, commented, said hello, even those not in the room. If there's any silent ones out there, thanks very much. Big love to you all. Keep well. And David and I shall return very soon. And apart from that, you can find us on splspro.com, Facebook, Telegram. Where else are we, Dave?
Indiglow here. I want to show some of
Yeah.
the recent videos that I've done that might be of interest for you. I've got certified person, legal personality, strawman, parts 1 and 2 for you to have a look at. If you are wanting more, they are quite lengthy videos. We've done certainty of intention part 1. I've got equity and trusts. We've got part 2 of 3 and part 3 of 3. So there's 3 videos there on the top row. If you look at the most recent that have been done, you will see those there. Part 1, certified person, legal personality. I'd like you to consider having a look at them. And then we have, I have got a backup channel. If you go in the search bar here and type SPLS space PRO and press enter, you will find, it may not be the top one for you, videos. This one, How Evil Runs the World, Prison on Earth, One World, New World Order 2022 must see. That's 2 hours and 31 presentation there on SPLS Pro channel. So have a look at that, subscribe and help me grow that community please, and have a look at Indy's newest, I don't think new is an actual word, is it? I'm tired. Newest presentations videos for you. 32 minutes, 52 minutes, 18 minutes, so I've cut them down. We've gone bite size. I've done what you've said, what you've required, and we're focusing on. So if you're interested in expressing a last will and testament, looking at powers of attorney, I've gone through the certainty of intention in 3 videos. I'm going to go through the certainty of objects and the certainty of subject matter in 3 videos each, so another 6 videos to follow from that. The rules of perpetuity, alright, is going to come, and we're going to look at that because that's important with regards to trust. Last will and testament is the private express trust as a testator with beneficiaries and executors that I think you could all do with having for free, or knowing a bit about before you express, or if you have expressed a trust and you may not have worded it, you may have used precatory words, you may not have done it in the correct format with the explicit wording and set out of which it requires, then you can listen to what I've said and compare that to what you've already got. We'll touch on codicils, or if not codicils, writing a new will and doing away with your old one and making a new one, or even just making one. And as I said, if there's anybody out there that benefits from this, and then ultimately, hopefully, might want to leave something in a will to our trust, then that would be greatly appreciated. Oh yes, land acquisitions, promises. I'll take anything at this point in time. Oh, put it to use. Threatening bits, old
small small castles.
old cars, old computer, anything. Nothing's too little and nothing's too big at this time. Oh, yeah.
It's all appreciated.
We'll give you, when you join SPLS Pro, you get a free last will and testament. We've got the forums for you to have a look at, documents, word searches. It's a repository of information. So when I go to forums here, if I hopefully screen share this. Before we go, tax main category, we put Stephen's new proposed council tax remedy in there with regards to what he's proposed, and credit to him for that, for sharing that and for coming up with it. Homegrown grassroots remedy. No other channel, no other group, no other thought leader has presented a council tax proposed remedy of this nature. It's new, but it's old. It's nothing no one
Yeah.
and it relies on hundreds of years old propositions within acts and statutes and civil procedure rules. But we've updated council tax proposed remedy for you to all have a look at. I've updated the notice of intent, understanding, claim of right, claim of life, various forums for government, Westminster legislation, person, and the Crowns, constables and police, court, civil procedure rules has been updated. The last will and testament, asset protection for private property, I've updated there with those 3 videos and various information which is pertinent to. So we're very busy. You come to the homepage if you are a private supporter, if you decide to join us, and halfway down, a third of the way down, that's where you get your last will and testament, complimentary editable Word document download.
Thanks, matter.
And that's it. We've done. Thank you all. Bless up. Much love. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you, Gansders, John, Kevin, Scribes.
No worries.
Gosh.
It's all good. Love you all. Thanks very much. See you soon.
Let me just have a look at the chat room and say goodbye. Just check and then, get off whenever, Kevin.
I've got to let the dog out again.
All right.
Paul, you...
That's a dog. Goodbye. Thank you all. Goodbye. Good night. Bless you.
Bless you. See you soon. Bye.
Speak soon, Kevin. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, no worries, Dave. I'll speak to you.
Ciao. Much love.